When I was a teenager, I had a great CD collection. I poured a lot of money into it. I loved it, and I spent about $120 to get a nice Remu CD rack. It was the most expensive piece of furniture that I owned at the time. If my house was on fire and my CD collection was there, it would have been the one thing that I would have grabbed. These days, I don't have a CD rack. I gave it to the family store and they sold it for $5. I still have some of my CDs, but it's pretty safe to say I won't be running into any burning buildings for them. They were really important to me for a time, but they haven't remained important. There's a verse in the Bible about things that remain important when everything else has faded. It's in 1 Corinthians 1, verse 13. And it says, "And now these three remain, faith, hope, and love, but the greatest of these is love." The verses before this one are some of the most beautiful in the whole Bible, and I would really encourage you to read them. They talk about the nature of love and why it's the most excellent way. But I want to talk about faith, hope, and love, because these are things that have remained important to me throughout my whole life. And they're more important to me now than they've ever been. Faith in the Bible is described as both belief and trust in God. Hebrews 11:6 says, "Without faith, it is impossible to please God, because anyone who comes to him must believe that he exists and that he rewards those who earnestly seek him." So faith involves belief that he exists and trust that he will give good things to those who put their trust in him. When I was a child, my faith was as simple as that. I believed God was real and he was good. And I believed that because people I trusted told me that. It was like it says in Romans 10:17. Faith comes from hearing, that is, hearing the good news about Christ. I heard the good news and I believed. But I was also really blessed to live in a family where faith was lived out. My parents lived by faith and they still do. So I heard it, I believed it, and I saw it work. My faith as a child was a simple faith because it hadn't really been tested, but it was a real faith. My story of faith has actually been a journey back to that childlike faith. I grew up and life caused me to question my faith, but it remained. After all my questioning, I held on to the belief that God is real and he's good. As I've got older, my faith has grown. I've seen God do miracles, and I'm convinced he can do whatever he wants, no limits. Day by day, though, my faith is still tested, and I'm beginning to learn that that's how God grows our faith, by stretching it to its limits. I'm also learning that God responds to faith. When I pray in faith, things happen. Throughout my life, my faith has become a rock that I stand on, which allows me to push out into the current and step into new things. So as I push ahead into 2022, I'm determined to be a man of faith, following the path that God's leading me on and stepping out and trusting him. I'm also determined to be a man of hope. When I was a child, I had hope, but I didn't know I had it. Partly because of childlike innocence, I guess, and partly due to the family that I grew up in. I think I basically absorbed hope through the air that I breathed. To follow God is to have hope because God always has more for us, and it's in his nature to bring good things out of bad situations. Even as a child, I was really aware that I hadn't seen all that God could do, and that awareness didn't make me doubt, it made me hope. As I got older, hope enabled me to endure when things were bad. When I went to university, I studied sociology and history. which means for 3 years I studied all the ways that people have tried to make the world a better place and all the ways that we messed it up. One paper I took was called The History of Racism, and it made me sick learning about what people can do to each other. But I always held on to hope. More recently, one of my friends said, "I like talking to you because you always give me hope." The hope I have is a gift, and I don't mean it's like a skill. I mean it's been given to me by God. And if he can give it to me, then he can give it to you. So I pray for you right now from Romans 15:13. May the God of hope fill you with all joy and peace as you trust in him, so that you may overflow with hope by the power of the Holy Spirit. Finally, what's remained important to me in my life is God's love. As a child, I believed it when I was told that God loved me, and I experienced his love through other people. I thank God that so many of the people who were influential in my life as a child had experienced God's love and were being transformed by it. God blessed them, and through them, he blessed me. When I was 20, God showed me that his love for us is the key to understanding everything. I was just about to go to Bible college because I had a lot of questions, and we went on a family holiday to the Gold Coast. We went to some church on Sunday, and the pastor, for some reason, gave me a set of tapes that were all about God's love. He just said, "I think I need to give these to you." And they changed the direction of my life. Suddenly, the whole message of the Bible made sense. It's a love story. And all we need to do is experience God's love for ourselves and share it with others. The first sermon I preached was called Love. How original. Because I thought I needed to preach something original, but what I really needed to preach was the least original thing there is. God loves us. Everything he does because he loves us. Since then, knowing and sharing God's love has been the ever-present goal of my life. God's love has transformed me. It's still transforming me. It's why I do what I do, and it's like the true north that I'm seeking. It's not some vague love for people. In 1 Corinthians 13, verses 4-8, Paul clearly sets out what it is. He says, it's patient, it's kind, it doesn't envy, it doesn't boast, it's not proud, it doesn't dishonor others, it's not self-seeking, it's not easily angered, it keeps no record of wrongs, it doesn't delight in evil but rejoices with the truth, it always protects, always trusts, always hopes, always perseveres, love never fails. This is the way I try to live my life. I want to hold everything I do up against that ideal. In absolutely everything I do, I want to do it patiently, out of kindness, not out of envy, not to boast, not out of a desire to honor others, to dishonor others, or to seek my own good. I refuse to keep a record of wrongs or delight in evil, but I will rejoice with the truth. It's my goal to always protect, always trust, always hope, always persevere, unfailingly. If you think that sounds hard, then you'd be right. It's straight up impossible if I try and do it without Christ. Loving people in that way can't be separated from loving God, and loving him comes from knowing how much he loves us. So trying to live a life of love has only led me into a deeper and deeper relationship with God. When I fail, which is quite a lot, I go to him and I say, help me, make me like you. And he is. I read something the other day that I thought was pretty cool. Apparently the word agape, which is the word that Paul uses for love in 1 Corinthians 13. Agape wasn't a common word before the New Testament, but the Christians took it up and made it their characteristic word for love. It's a new word for a new idea. Whereas the best concept of love before the New Testament was a love for the best they knew, the Christians thought of love as that quality that we see displayed in the cross. It's a love for the utterly unworthy, a love that proceeds from a God who is love. It's a love lavished on others without a thought of whether they're worthy to receive it or not. It comes from the one who loves, rather than from any merit in the one who is loved. The Christian who has experienced God's love to them while they were yet a sinner has been transformed by the experience. Now they see people as God sees them. They see them as the object of God's love, as those for whom Christ died. That means their attitude towards them is one of love, of self-giving agape. They come to practice the love which seeks nothing for itself, but only the good of the loved one. I know from my life that it's possible to experience the gift of God's love in such a way that your whole idea of what love is forever changed. And then as you respond to that, you become someone different than you were before. These three gifts, faith, hope, and love, remain when everything else is gone, because they are things that change you. They actually become who you are. You don't just do faith, hope, and love. You become a person of faith, hope, and love. This is what God is wanting for us. He's doing it in me. And if he can do it in me, he can do it in you. If you're a follower of Christ, then you will have these gifts. We all have them in different measures. But what's important is not so much how much you have, but what you do with it. God hasn't given us these gifts to keep them to ourselves. In Matthew 25:14-30, Jesus tells a story to describe what the kingdom of heaven will be like. In it, he talks about a man who went on a long journey. Before he went, he gave 3 of his servants different amounts of money, each according to his ability. The 2 who got the most money invested it and were able to give back double what they'd been given. But the one who had been given the least buried the money to keep it safe and handed it back to his master when he got back. This man was punished for his laziness. His money was taken away and given to the one who had the most, and he was thrown outside into the darkness. There seems to be a feeling in the wider church right now that times are difficult, and we just need to protect what we have. Protect the faith. Hold on to hope. Hold on to God's love. Rubbish. I think that's rubbish. The world is in desperate need of faith, hope, and love, and we have them. So we don't need to protect them. We need to use them. If we're timid and we just try and protect what we have, then we'll lose it. But when we take risks and we use the measure that we've been given, we'll be given more. These are not gifts that we should hide away in a cupboard somewhere. They are gifts that need to be used every moment of every day. So my challenge to you is, in your everyday life, whenever you're faced with a challenge, big or small, to use the gifts that you've been given, to stand with faith, to lean on hope, and to respond with the measure of love that you have, trusting that as you step out, God will give you more, and he will bring good to those around you, because that's his nature. Ask the question, am I responding with faith in this situation? Am I responding with hope? Am I responding with love? If not, then change the way you respond. God, I thank you that you don't give as the world gives, that your gifts remain. I want to pray for everyone listening, that you would teach them to respond to every situation in their lives with the measure of faith, hope, and love that you have given. And I thank you that your word says that as we use what we have, you'll give us more. I also want to pray for those listening who feel like they've never known your gifts of faith and hope, and never experienced your love in such a way that they've been forever changed. I pray that you give those gifts now. Amen.